Good evening. I hereby call to order the April 24th, 2017 council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJaan?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mr. Mercurio?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Tressi?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now move on to acceptance of the minutes of our last meeting, which was a special council meeting held on April 11th, 2017. Hope everyone's had a chance to read the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of April 11th, 2017, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved as written. We will next move on to correspondence and announcements, and I have something I'd like to share. First, I want to offer our thoughts and prayers to Ron Kabunski, one of our former councilmen who is ill right now. We found out on Thursday that Ron was taken to the hospital, and for those who did not know, I just wanted to share the news so that we can all offer our thoughts and prayers to both Ron and Eileen, who was our human resource administrator here at City Hall. So I just want them to know we're all thinking of them and hope for Ron's speedy recovery. I also have had some conversations with residents who live in Hidden Woods regarding the openness of their backyards along 271. So I called ODOT to ask if there was any possibility for us to get a sound barrier wall to block some of 271 from their backyards. And I was told by one of the gentlemen that it's all federal funding and your home had to be in place before the highway, so there was no way we could get federal funding for the sound barrier walls. So I went down to ODOT and I met with the director and a couple of his engineers, and Mr. Mano and I had a long conversation about what we could do to help these residents, and they suggested that we plant trees, because though it wouldn't be a sound barrier, it would be some sort of barrier from 271. So in my spare time, I looked up anywhere that would give us a grant to get trees for free, and I found the availability of a grant at the Ohio Department of Forestry, and they thought we had a good chance to get this grant if we did the paperwork, and it had to be done within 2 weeks. So I called our partner from the Euclid Creek watershed, Claire Posius, and Claire spoke to Chagrin River watershed, and we had these two groups put together along with Dan Gerson, who was absolutely wonderful in putting the grant together. We did apply for the grant by April 13th. That was the deadline date. ODOT has agreed and supported us in getting the grant. They've given us their support and said they would assist with planting the trees. And Mr. Finaro agreed that he would maintain the trees if we get them. So we don't know if we'll be successful, but we're hoping that we will. And it was like 3,500 plants and shrubs. The grant is for over $90,000. It's a 2-year grant, and we'll find out in July, and I believe then the funds would come sometime in October. But I wanted to thank Mr. Gerson, our engineer, for, I know he's on a million other jobs, but he was kind enough to step up and and get that grant in. And I can't thank Claire Posius from Euclid Creek Watershed. I can't thank her enough. Her and Alicia Beatty from Chagrin River Watershed. They both just stepped up to the plate. So I'm really hoping that if we get the trees, it really will help the residents so they don't have to look at 271 and they won't get the debris and the erosion, you know, back into their backyards. So I wanted to just mention that. I was pretty excited about getting that. And is there any other correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Snyder.
The Euclid Creek Watershed has one agenda on tonight's, on tonight's agenda, and we'll go over it when we come over that. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this whole Hidden Woods, because I spent a lot of time myself, and I'm glad that they finally figured something out. I think our law director can maybe add to what he had found out. I actually walked all of the backyards with Mr. Barnes, our state representative, and also Joe Finar. We all met out there. And
Recently?
within the last 5 months, 4 months. And so then we had our law director look into it and talk to the state to see what he could find out, because this has been a problem for a while, and the
Yes.
residents have been very concerned, so I've been trying to
Yes.
keep in touch with them as well. So I'm glad that something's been
Yeah.
decided upon, and I don't know if you wanted to add in what you had found out in the conversations you've had with Mr. Barnes.
Yeah, I did talk to Mr. Barnes, and he had suggested that there could be a grandfathered procedure where you would measure the house that was closest to 271 at the time the road was designed. And if you could make an argument that that house was close enough and they should put up the sound barriers, then very possibly they would do that. And so that was the last I did on it, and he said go and look at the title report, see where they are, and see what the builder promised the homeowners at that time, because there may be something in there, and then make your application and your argument.
Well, talking to Claire Posius from Euclid Creek Watershed, she mentioned to me that it was a forest before the developer tore down took down every tree. So,
Yeah.
exactly, Hidden Woods. And because he took every tree down, it should have been part, and ODOT told me the same thing, because it was treed. The city at that time should have made the developer leave some of those trees as a barrier, but they didn't. The city just allowed the developer to do whatever he wanted to do. He tore every tree down, and she looked at the aerial view from that time when the trees were there. So, but you cannot get a sound barrier wall if the property was built after the highway. So, chances are we're never going to get that until, the houses have been there, a long period of time. But again, the gentleman who is the director at ODOT, Mr. Mano, and I were there. I told him I was very persistent, and if he didn't give me the sound barrier wall, he had to do something else for me, or I'd be back. And he said, go for trees. It won't deflect the sound, but it will in fact give them some protection and some privacy in their backyard. And if you plant large enough trees or many trees and stagger them, you'll get some sort of effect of privacy back there. So I've been emailing with the residents, for I don't know how many months, and so they're pretty happy. We're just waiting to see if we get that grant, and we'll know in
Well,
July.
if the grant doesn't come through, we're still working on getting the sound barrier
Yeah,
erected.
I hope you can get them.
Madam President.
If I could just interject real quick, wasn't Piercefield and Dunfield, those houses were after the freeway, and there's a wall there, right? So,
Express lanes.
Express lanes, they went
Express
before
lanes,
the
that's
express
the,
oh,
that's
that's
really-
the date.
It's not the
Okay.
highway
It's
part,
not
it's
the
the express
271
Or the
itself.
express lanes.
Gotcha.
Express lanes, right. Yeah, it's not the highway.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yeah, I also was working with Senator Yuko about a year ago, and then he got ill, and he was going to try to help us out with the state and getting a wall, but he fell ill. So So maybe he's still working on it behind the scenes.
Well, as long as we get something to help the residents, that's all that makes a difference. So, any other correspondence? Okay, we'll move on to our reports of officers, and we'll begin with our mayor, Mayor DeSico.
Thank you, and good evening. I see Mr. Teresi was thumbing through the summer fun edition of the City Focus. Those should be arriving in homes as we speak. This summer's Focus has a different format than usual, and I want to thank Tammy Kleins and Renee Augustine for coming up with the new design and all their efforts. It looks great. Along with a day in the life theme, which features mayor's office, council, and other city hall staff, it also has a handy calendar that gives you all the important dates for the summer events. A ton of work goes into this publication, and when it gets ready to go out to print, I would say that every spare eye in City Hall scrutinizes this thing. So when it came to my office this afternoon, I happened to open it, and I just turned to Lenny Morgano's page, and Lenny is an inspector in the building department. And I was admiring how great it looked, and then I looked at Lenny's name, and it was spelled wrong. So I want to apologize to Lenny. No matter how hard we all looked at it, we missed that, so my apologies. On April 12th, we held our third joint meeting of the BZA, ABR, Planning Commission, and Building Department to discuss the Mayfield Heights Commercial Corridor Design Manual. During the first two meetings, there was a lot of discussion as to what modifications our ordinances, to our ordinances were necessary to implement the standards. After further discussion, it was determined since the manual as a whole was codified in January, the recommendation of the group was that for now, no further modifications to the ordinance be proposed, and the boards and commissions would continue to work to implement the standards as afforded by each project. We also agreed to get together quarterly, as all in attendance could see that the exchange of ideas was very worthwhile. And I want to thank everyone who did attend and donated their spare time to discuss the matter. We do have a big announcement for our parade marshal. Sam Rutigliano has agreed to be our parade marshal this year. So all of us who remember the Cardiac Kids should be excited. We may have to go to YouTube to show the younger generation what the Browns used to be. So that is a great announcement. Last Tuesday, I had the pleasure of swearing in David Kern as a uniformed police chaplain. David is a graduate of the 2016 Citizens Academy and lead minister at Vitality Church in Menor. Following the Citizens Academy, David expressed interest in working with or somehow helping out our police department. And Chief Bittner thought it would be good to have some extra spiritual assistance within the agency as those in policing are facing difficult scrutiny from society. Last week we had two ribbon cuttings, the grand opening of Ashley Furniture and the grand opening of Moe's Southwest Grill. We welcome them both to our vibrant community. Also, last week I met with Kevin Pugley and Laura Atherton of Gardner to discuss our HVAC system. Mr. Mano, did your ears pick up?
I'm listening intently.
You may recall that we signed a shared savings agreement with them to see how we can become more energy efficient. As part of those conversations, we also let them know that we wanted to get our system running correctly. And as part of that agreement, at no further charge, they did bring in an engineer to take a look at our original plans and look at the system in general. And the engineer walked through with Joe Finaro, our service director, and his conclusions were kind of, they weren't, it was kind of, the system is really messed up. That's basically what it came to. There were design parts that were omitted and other areas of the design that were simply not installed properly. So our next step, if we wanted to do something about this, is to authorize Gardner to do a full-blown study on what it would cost to fix all those problems. There were pumps that were never installed. There's exhaust fans that were never hooked up. There are cold air returns in rooms that, in hallways where a large room next to it doesn't have one in it at all. So there's major problems, and if we wanted to get a concrete proposal to fix it, we would have to hire Gardner, or we'd have to hire somebody, but Gardner would probably be the guy to do it, the business to do it. And that proposal would be $25,000 to give us an idea of what it would cost to fix it. And the off the cuff, or just off the top of his head, he was thinking that those repairs could cost anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. So that's the bad news there. Sorry about that.
I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so.
Well, we all knew it was messed up. Yeah. But the shared savings agreement still is going forward, and they're still going to find some savings there. So that is still in effect, and they're confident that they could save us some money there. So we will save some money. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there questions for the mayor? Mayor, I received a letter, oh, you didn't?
I did.
Oh, Donna. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just the mayor, please. When you talked about why do we need a company to tell us don't we just get like an HVAC companies to come in and give quotes? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, the Gardner is our HVAC company. They're servicing and maintaining our system right now. So that's who we had come in to do it. So in order to exactly, get a firm number on what it would cost to fix everything and put it back the way it should have been originally, it would take a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of engineering to figure out what goes into it.
Thank you.
Mayor,
And-
one
Mr.
question.
Mano?
Do we in fact know who originally installed this system?
They went out of business 1 week after City Hall opened.
Geez, I wonder why.
Really?
I don't know if it was a week, it was shortly afterwards.
Would it be less expensive if to really put it back the way it should have been installed, $200,000 to $300,000? Are we better off starting from scratch?
Well, tearing everything out and starting from scratch, I think would be a lot more expensive.
Would it?
Yeah. Because right now they're talking about adding pumps to what's already here, which were never added to start with. Making things work that were never working before, connecting thermostats that were never connected, getting the exhaust fans to work. The fans are there, but they just need them to work properly with the system. I don't think they're exhausting now at all. So it's, I'm sure to put in a whole new system here I couldn't even guess, but I would imagine it would be a heck of a lot of money.
Thank you. I did receive a copy of a letter from Mr. Rothenberg, and he has said that I have his permission to read it. It was addressed to the mayor, and it says, "When I was first asked to become a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I was excited that I would be involved in helping Mayfield Heights become a better place to live. For many years, I felt that I had accomplished what I had set out to do. I was able to voice my opinion and effect change regarding ways to improve the community. Unfortunately, recent developments have been taking place within the city to dampen my enthusiasm. It appears that no matter how hard I try to prevent dire mistakes in future projects and planning, my words fell on deaf ears. The way that the strategic plan is being rolled out shows that both time and money have been wasted by the city. It has also helped me to conclude that my voice is no longer mattered. It is disappointing that we have allowed the Goodwill store to have such a prominent place in our community, and that the strategic plan once again is being ignored in the setting for the new Chick-fil-A at the entrance to Golden Gate Center. Why have the strategic plan if it is not going to be followed, especially with this first opportunity to show all good that it can do? It is disappointing that those in control do not listen to those with knowledge and expertise in this field. Therefore, I am tendering my resignation from the Board of Zoning Appeals effective immediately. I have a higher regard for my abilities than to merely be a rubber stamp for the current administration's directives. Further, I do not wish to be associated with destructive ideas and planning problems that could so easily be avoided. I have enjoyed my years and involvement with Mayfield Heights and only wish the community well in the years to come. Sincerely, Jerry Rothenberg. And I received this copy, and Mr. Rothenberg has said I should read that for
Madam President, since I was more or less named in that letter, I'd like to address a couple things. Mr. Rothenberg was never told to rubber stamp anything. His opinion was valued by members of the Board of Zoning Appeal and myself. He was always allowed to express his opinion. The recent decisions by the Board of Zoning Appeals were, he was the only dissenting voice from the Board of Zoning Appeals on those decisions. So I just want to set the record straight that Mr. Rothenberg was never told to rubber stamp anything. He was entitled to his opinion, and his opinion was valued. If he doesn't like the outcome, that other people didn't agree with his opinion, well, that's a whole nother story. But I just wanted to set that record straight.
I was very surprised to get a copy of the letter. Mr. Rothenberg is, he's a terrific architect and sits on the design review board in the city of Cleveland and a planner, and I'm sure he'll be sorely missed by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So he asked me to share the letter, so I did. Is there anything else for the mayor? We'll move on to a report from our law director, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening, but I would request an executive session at the conclusion of regular business to discuss pending and imminent litigation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our law director? Thank you. We'll move on to a report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
I have no report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Are there any questions for Mr. Tribby? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards, and we'll begin with our Building Committee, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. Ordinance number 2017-10 is on third reading tonight, and it will need to be tabled as it has not yet been revised per our discussion in the Building Committee meeting on 4/20. I still need to meet with the mayor, Mr. Murphy, and Mr. Jameson to discuss these suggested revisions before sending it back to council. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? We'll move on to our Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Finance and Audit Committee has not met, so I do not have a report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Legislative Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? We will move on to Public Works and Services Committee, Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a report. Happy to say that it is officially spring, as all the plows have been taken off of the trucks in the service department.
Yay.
And the crews have been very busy. They've installed 40 new trees on tree lawns. All of the streets have been swept one time, so they made it around the city one time with the street sweeper. And our park crews are in full swing, top dressing any winter damage from our snow plows, and doing any sidewalk maintenance, as well as getting the park in top shape and the baseball diamonds ready to go. And they are currently working on getting the water back on in all the parks and opening up the bathrooms, and that should be done this week. The traffic department is working on replacing street signs on the south side of the city. They've installed about 20 new no parking signs, and they're working on replacement of street identification signs in the Ashcroft area. And the changeover is to make all the signs uniform. The traffic department also has finished up a traffic survey on Mayfield Road corridor, and we'll be making a few timing changes to some intersections. And the road department has also installed some drainage on the east side of the main park. And they've removed the pool cover and continue to make concrete and catch basin repairs. I spoke about DPave Neo a couple meetings ago, and they were working in conjunction with the Cuyahoga River Restoration, and they have officially picked a site for their first project, which will be on our city property. And this will take place on May 6th and 7th. It's going to start at 8:30 on Saturday and 8 o'clock on Sunday. And this project will be in the community building. We'll be at the community building, and all volunteers are welcome. And I believe we have a representative here tonight to speak to us during the public portion. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mercurio. Are there any questions for Mr. Mercurio? Mr. Mercurio, I have a question.
Sure.
When planting the new trees, do residents call in and ask if they can have a tree, or
I believe they do, Joe.
is that they call and you plant it on their? You just don't arbitrarily plant even where you've removed?
Madam President, we get some in my office too. We get phone calls. I'm surprised members of council haven't gotten requests. Have you gotten requests before for trees? If you do,
Yeah,
just
the past,
yeah,
yeah.
turn them over to Joe, and Joe takes care of it.
But I know that a while ago, Mr.
Maybe not all of them, but we have a limited number.
We have 200 or 300 calls, Joe.
Just gonna say they're done.
Thank you. We'll move on to our Recreation and Parks Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Registration for summer camps and swim lessons is now open to residents and non-residents. Limited space is still available. If you're looking for something for your child to do this summer, we have several week-long camps open this year. We have tennis camp, science camp, cheer camp, art explorers camp, and the sport camp that's run by Mayfield varsity coaches. On May 3rd, it's Remember When time. Join us as the Euclid Beach Boys present a walk down memory lane with a presentation on Euclid Beach Park. Take a ride on the Euclid Beach Boys rocket ship from 5 to 6 p.m., then enjoy dinner before the presentation. It's $10 per person, all ages welcome. Registration deadline is this Friday, April 28th. Information can be had at the Park and Rec offices. Did you know we have a bus trip almost every month of the year? Check out Fresh Time on May 12th from 11 to 12 p.m., 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is a free tour with samples, but you must register with the Recreation Department in advance. Canton Akron on May 19th from 10:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. The cost is $50 and includes the National First Ladies Museum, McKinley Memorial, and lunch on your own at Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens. Do you like to play bocce? If you do, we have summer leagues. Men's Thursday night bocce league begins May 25th at 7 p.m. Co-ed Friday night bocce league begins on June 2nd at 6:30 p.m. The cost is $225 for a resident team and $250 for a non-resident team. For more information on any of these activities, visit the website and glance through our activity guide or call us at 440-442-2627. There had been scheduled a Park and Rec meeting for tomorrow evening, but that meeting has been canceled and will take place on May 23rd. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano? Okay, we will move on to Safety and Transportation Committee, Mrs. Finney.
Thank you, Madam President. Prior to our council meeting this evening, we had a safety and transportation meeting, and that was to discuss two resolutions pertaining to the city. They were applying for grants through NOACA, for two projects: the Mayfield Road Corridor Traffic Signal Safety and Equipment Upgrade, and the Lander Road Roundabout. And these are Resolutions 2017-20 and Resolution 2017-21. And the committee recommends that council supports both these resolutions. Also, TMS engineers discussed several other problem traffic areas in the area, which we'll discuss at a further time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Finney. Are there any questions for Mrs. Finney? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. We have several items on tonight's agenda. I see the applicant is here to answer any of our questions, and we can address those as they come up.
Thank you. Next, move on to our Planning Commission, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. We met to discuss the final site plan for Chick-fil-A, which is on our agenda tonight. This approval is based upon 3 variances also on the agenda tonight. I want to make a side note to this, although I unanimously, or the commission unanimously approved this to the council, I still would like to see the egress and ingress to be straightened out. The driveways going in and out of Golden Gate Shopping Center. I believe these are a hazard. I don't think people can get around these curves safely, and I think they should be straightened out. And I also believe that with all the construction they're doing, and besides moving a sewer line, that it would be very easy for them to straighten these out at that time. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Seeing none, we will now move on to comments from the public. Excuse me. Pursuant to Section 121.02, subsection H8 of the codified ordinances, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak with a maximum of 30 minutes for the entire public portion. Although this is not a time for public debate, it is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please note that there will be no personal attacks or comments allowed. If you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized, and then you can approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:37, and I will open the public portion. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nicole. You want my home address, or?
Yes, work is fine.
1299 Superior Avenue in Cleveland. Hello. First off, I want to thank you all for allowing me to be here today. I want to thank Mayor DeSico and the Service Department, especially Joe Fernero, for being so helpful and supportive and making this possible. So I work with Cuyahoga River Restoration. Our mission is to restore and protect the environmental quality of the Cuyahoga River, nearshore Lake Erie, and select Lake Erie tributary watersheds, including Euclid Creek, and we work in partnership with the Chagrin River watershed. Mayfield Heights Community Center will be the location for the pilot DPAVE project. DPAVE is a project that gets volunteers from the community involved in removing impervious surface and beautifying something that they care about. It is designed to bring the community together to bond over their hard work and perseverance. We are training a talented group of about 50 individuals to be project leaders in their own DPAVE projects, as well as ourselves for future DPAVE projects we do within the community and nearby communities. This project will remove 3 sections of pavement from the community center parking lot and replace it with rain gardens. These rain gardens will capture, absorb, and infiltrate water and reduce flooding, as well as reduce the amount of stormwater runoff entering the storm sewer. What we will plant will provide shade and beautification to the community center and will be placed where people can see it and appreciate it. So, I'm prepared.
Nicole, would you state your full name?
Nicole Voracek.
Thank you. And where are the sections of parking lot that you're going to remove?
They're at the Mayfield Heights Community Center. I don't have the exact plan with me, but there's 3 different sections that are right above where the storm water would hit before the storm sewer.
Great.
We're not losing any parking spaces.
No, no.
That was my next question.
That was why I kind of went around there and asked that question.
Yeah, sorry, forgot to
That's
mention
okay.
that part.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having
Luck
me.
with the project.
Thank you. Is that good? Okay.
think that's in a. Mr. Kramer, though we know your name, please state it for the record.
Fred Kramer, 1187 Golden Gate Boulevard, and I'm here primarily as Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals because before you tonight are some unique type of situations. We are looking at Chick-fil-A variances, and Mr. Rothenberg obviously was a dissenting vote. I would preface my remarks by saying I will miss Jerry on the board. He has always been a good asset. He's been insightful. He's been very helpful. And I've never felt that anybody had any restrictions on what they said. I'm looking at 3 members of the group here tonight. President Mayor DeSico, Mr. Mercurio, all of who have had the pleasure of sitting with us on the board. And I think they can all agree that open discussion is encouraged and dissent is never questioned. We take the vote, we finish it off, and we do what we think is right, based on the evidence. Having said that, we're looking at the 3 Chick-fil-A variances, which are now in a state of, we granted the variances for all 3. My issue that has always come about as far as is concerned is this council amended the ordinances January 23rd to incorporate the information as far as the Mayfield Road Corridor project. So when you amended that on January 23rd, the wording specifically as included in the ordinance was that it incorporated that provision into the ordinances as rewritten herein. Mr. Murphy's drafting. It was not amended as an emergency situation, so therefore I thought it would probably go into effect 30 days later in February. My concern always has been on this Chick-fil-A project as to whether or not, in fact, that Mayfield Road Corridor project and the manual is actually applicable. Under the circumstances, I felt a very good possibility that the ordinances in effect prior to that would trump anything that came in later. So I had issues with that as far as my mental approach to the thing, is how we're gonna look at it. How are we gonna approach this to have the best situation for the city of Mayfield Heights? We didn't wanna be in a situation, going back to the Shimo situation, where we got ourselves in all sorts of trouble making bad decisions. So the first concern that I had pertaining to that and addressing it was whether or not the manual as adopted by council was in effect at the time we had it. I wasn't too sure where we were in the application process, but given the fact that it had been before planning and given the fact that it had been before various other bodies, I was fairly sure it was fairly well along as far as the application is concerned. Taking that in consideration, I thought we had to take in the ordinances, consider them, take into consideration the manual, and specifically the standards contained within that, and consider that part of it. So we were sort of blending all of the aspects together. That brought us to the situation we're looking at when we heard the cases. First question was, what about the setback? How much was it supposed to be? Well, the ordinances had 120-foot setback from the center line. Guidelines, standards rather, in the manual had a very specific difference to that, so therefore there was a differentiation. The applicant amended, so what was before you tonight as far as resolutions would consider that aspect. We had the second aspect, which was called the open sales as far as the patio is concerned. Given the fact that in Chick-fil-A situation, they really don't sell out there, it was kind of a moot point. It's not some of the bars we've looked at and things like that where people sell outside and bring it in. Basically, you ordered it inside and then took it back out. And that was what Chick-fil-A is. But it was what questionable is whether that variance is even necessary, but an excess of caution was felt was appropriate to do it. And the last one comes to the point, and this is something that was alluded to earlier by Mr. Gijan, the question of traffic control. We had a situation where the standards as set forth pertain for various aspects, including limited size of the building to be included. And there's some ambiguities in there. But we looked at that. We looked at the variance all the way around the building whether it was in place. Mr. Rothenberg felt that it should be closer to the street. Given the situation of traffic control and traffic storage and things like that, it was felt it was far better to have these traffic move through in a long pattern on 3 sides so that you'd have no problem with some of those cars problems with the ingress and egress on the east and west side. But if you just picture where you're sitting right now, you have the Chick-fil-A in the middle. If those cars went back out either to east or west and got involved with some of those driveways that Mr. Dijon was concerned about, then you would have a traffic control problem. So it was felt under those circumstances it was better for the whole thing to be allowed in that fashion. So that basically was the 3 approaches we took. Now, where were we as far as the ordinance manual concerned? Sort of the position we took was, as far as the ordinance is concerned, if it has a specific statement and was not contradicted by the standards, then under those circumstances, it would be something that we could follow as far as the ordinance. If there was a contradiction in the standards, then we had to look at the standards to make a determination as to whether or not they trumped the ordinance. And if there's something in the guidelines, which we moved into the next aspect, we then saw something that this is what council has decided was the future development concept as far as the city is concerned. And based on council's decision, we would take that into consideration in making our evaluation. So there you have the 3 factors encompassed in this. It was not easy to come to that, but I think that's the conclusion we arrived at. I don't know if Mr. Murphy has a comment pertaining to pending situation, because I've always felt that if you start changing ordinances and tightening them, you cause a problem as far as litigation potential is concerned. So having looked at it, that's the position we took. And Mr. Rothenberg disagreed, but I think the basic bottom line is what was best for the city and the community under the circumstances. He kind of thought we should move it close to the street. If that was the case, you knocked out your driveway, your drive-through, and you caused all sorts of other issues as far as the ingress and egress, especially as far as the east and west is concerned. But that's a quick synopsis of what took place. I know council is looking at our minutes, which are not extensive as far as that's concerned, but I hope that will give you additional information to make a decision tonight. Mr. Murphy says, council has the final word. He said that many times at our meetings. But we always helpful if we give council the information to help them make the right decision. And by the way, as part of this today, thinking about it, I went back and read all the SHIMO cases. And the city office didn't have anything to do. And I went through the SHIMO cases and said, yeah, we can make some real bad decisions under the wrong circumstances. Hopefully that we'll not make more bad decisions that cost us. And I'd be happy to respond to any questions pertaining how we arrived at the decision, our thought process, and the rest of it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. So we have standards, we have guidelines, and we have ordinances. And so we just kind of pick whichever we think is going to work. Is that kind of it in a nutshell?
Not. Ordinances specifically are in place.
Correct.
We adopted another ordinance, 1197.01, I don't think I've stated that, on January 23rd, the second meeting of council. Incorporated in that were standards. The definition of standards were that it was mandatory that to be followed. Incorporated also in that were guidelines. The bottom line is, if you have your ordinance and they set forth the specifics, you have a guideline to work off. If the ordinances are contradicted by the standards, then you have to fall back on the standards because that was a later enacted position of council. Mr. Murphy can contradict me as far as that's concerned, but bottom line is, I think that's where we're at. And the standards, the way the definition of page 2 of the design manual sets forth that is the case. And the way the ordinance was adopted, 1197.01, that's the way you set up. So we start with the ordinance. If standards contradict, standards trump. Setback is an example. You start with that. We have a different setback under the standards, so we use the setback that's set forth in the standards. Guidelines are advisory. They're something we'd like to do, something we want to do, something we hope to do. And as the mayor commented earlier, the design meeting, the planning meeting, you look at the whole thing, it's gonna take a lot of implementation. And if we don't wanna get into a lot more confusion than we already have, so best at this point to take it on a case-by-case basis and look at individually. And those meetings that we had with the Architectural Board Review and Planning were very helpful because one, it forced all of us to look a lot closer and be more knowledgeable. Number two, we know the problems that the other boards have. And number three, we were able to interact with the other boards. They were a very helpful approach that was taken by the city. And it was a very profitable situation, very profitable exercise. I'm happy to participate.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Are there any, Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Kramer, do you think the driveway should be straightened out, in your honest
You
opinion?
know, Bob, that's a wonderful thing to ask because it wasn't part of our variance request. All I know is, with your variance that you have to look at, we will have more storage of vehicles to prevent problems with east and west driveways. I know you in planning and zoning have had this back and forth. I've watched the minutes. I read your minutes. Sorry about that. I read them all. But having looked at them, I think that you've had real issues with the driveway straightening. I don't have an opinion. Guess what? It hasn't been before the board. If it does, we'll think about it then. I like not to prejudge cases.
Thank you.
I don't have the answer to that. All I know is the variance request will help preventing additional traffic congestion.
Any, Mr. Mano?
I just want to say thank you for clarifying things, and we're very, very lucky to have you on the board.
People keep
I really
telling me-
mean that.
We really
People
are.
keep telling me that.
We
I'm
really
not sure
are.
it's true,
We are.
but I enjoy being there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy just said it best, until we disagree with you.
Well, Mr. Murphy and I knew each other 30 years ago when he was with the Regional Sewer District and we had litigation back and forth together. It was a good time back then. So, but it's been 40 years on the board. I think I've enjoyed it. I'm not sure sometimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Kramer. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard this evening? Okay, seeing no one else, it is 7:52 and we'll close the public portion. We will now move on to resolutions, and we'll begin with Resolution 2017-17. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-17, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Brian Constantine, CBRE Sky Group, on behalf of Chick-fil-A, 6390 Mayfield Road, a variance to permit outdoor seating on a patio in conjunction with a new restaurant on the property. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 86231-001. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Cepeda?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy?
Yes. As we've heard, the applicant went before BZA for 3 variances and I'm so sorry. A motion, do I have a motion to approve? I always want to skip that. Mrs. Finney, I apologize. Mr. Mercurio? It's not necessary, you're right. The applicant did go before BZA for 3 variances in order to get this Chick-fil-A on the Golden Gate property. The specific resolution is for outdoor seating on a patio. Mr. Kramer stated in the minutes that the design manual does not have standards relating to outside sales. So for this resolution, BZA based their decision on ordinance 1195.01. And Mr. Mercurio, would you like to add anything?
This was a unanimous approval. Outdoor activity and seating is encouraged in the design manual. In this particular case, the outside area, there's no outdoor sales, there's no alcohol, it does not abut against a residential property, so it was unanimously approved.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJean,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy.
Yes. Resolution 2017-17 has been approved. Wait a minute. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-18. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-18, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Brian Constantine, CBRE Sky Group, on behalf of Chick-fil-A, 6390 Mayfield Road, a variance to allow a 45-foot setback between the right-of-way and the building front in conjunction with a new restaurant on the property. Valga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-31001. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. DeJean, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney,
Suspend. Suspend.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJean,
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio,
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. On this resolution, the applicant was again before BZA where the 45-foot setback variance was requested. Here it is referenced that the design manual includes a building setback standard and a standard for variance with no reference to the codified drive-throughs. It's stated in the BZA minutes that this was the only way the building could be placed on the property, with the drive-through lanes running parallel along Mayfield Road between the building and the street. Mr. Mercurio, would you like to add anything on this variance?
Sure, a couple things. First off, the variance was for 45 feet. The setback is actually 70 feet, so I think the resolution needs to be corrected. It's a 70-foot setback, the variance was 45 feet.
So it's allowed 25?
25 plus 45 gets you your 70-foot setback.
Is that in the minutes?
It
that
is in
way?
the minutes.
Yep.
On
there it
page
is.
3, Mr. Yep. The
Page
building,
3.
the building was measured from the right-of-way, and it was determined that it is 70 feet.
So the variance would be 45
The
feet.
variance is 45 feet. The verbiage in here, it says a variance to allow a 45-foot setback. It's actually to allow a 70-foot setback.
Good catch.
Okay.
Is that, I see Brian Constantine from CBRE shaking his head. Do you want to step to the podium and state your
Brian.
name and address?
Yep, Brian Constantine, 27003 Glenside Lane, Olmsted Township. Yeah, that is correct, based on the letter that we received from Board of Zoning Appeals, that it would be a 45 foot front setback variance to place the building 70 feet from the right-of-way.
I have the BZA minutes.
I've read
It's
them.
a-
Yeah. That is correct then, and, you know, rather than a motion to amend, it is my error, it's not 45 feet, it's 70 feet. So the 70-foot setback can be inserted into the resolution, and that would be voted on then,
Without amending.
right?
Okay. Are you looking for something else that we need to, oh, okay. Sitting here. watching you, waiting for you to. Where's this? Oh, it is. Did anyone realize this before tonight?
I just caught it earlier, so.
Yeah, the clarification is you're required 125 and they will only have,
The ordinance was 125. We went by the standards and the guideline, which
Okay.
is 25 feet from the right away from the sidewalk.
from the right-of-way, because the 120 is from the center line.
Correct.
So you've got a difference there. So how far are you from the right-of-way?
From the right-of-way, we are 70 feet.
70 feet, and you are allowed
25.
25,
that's
so you
the
need a
45
45-foot variance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's correct.
It's just the wording.
Is that what you presented when you applied for your variance?
Yes, it was amended. We initially went by the ordinance, which was the 120-foot setback from the center line of Mayfield. And then we were told that we were going to be going by the new
The new guidelines. Oh, no,
guidelines.
they're not guidelines, those are standards.
Well,
No,
the
you're
standards,
talking about guidelines, or is it the codified?
Mr. Kramer
Right.
explained that, right?
Yeah.
They were going by the
He-
standards.
Yes, it was the standards.
It's so confusing.
It's a 45-foot setback variance. That word should be inserted, and that was my error, so that can be inserted, and that's clarified.
So this is the case here. So what is this? Clarify the following variances of which should be considered. 35
That's what it says.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you don't know what
On
that
the minutes.
I can clarify your question.
Okay.
The 60 feet was from the end of the patio and not the building?
It says, yeah, it says sidewalk in the,
Right, the 60 feet takes you to the patio. We needed a setback from the building, which was another 10 feet, which made it 70 feet.
it says 35
She's
front.
looking at, there's a 35-foot setback.
Right, there's
variance.
the 35-foot setback was from the patio. It needed to be from the building, which made it, we had to add another 10 feet onto that to get it to the
45.
building, so it's 45, giving the setback 70 feet from the building.
Okay. So I know Mr. Rothenberg, I happened to walk into the planning meeting and I heard Mr. Rothenberg ask about changing, the position of the building.
Sure.
There was no other way you could have arranged this building?
We looked at multiple alternative ways to position the building on the site, and there wasn't any other way that really worked. The main reason we were really looking at it was because we have a large storm sewer line that's running under the building that we have to relocate, and it's going to be fairly expensive to do that. So we were looking at alternate ways to lay this building out, but nothing really worked with the requirements for the stacking, the drive-through, and everything.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Constantine. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Savetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, Resolution 2017-18 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-19. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-19, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Brian Constantine, CBRE Sky Group, on behalf of Chick-fil-A, 6390 Mayfield Road, a variance to allow drive-through lanes to be located between the building and the primary street in conjunction with a new restaurant on the property. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-31-001. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. And this resolution, the applicant again needed another variance, and this is to allow the drive-through lanes to run between Mayfield Road and the building. And for this variance, decisions were based on the design manual, not an ordinance from the existing codified. Mr. Mercurio.
Correct. The current codified does not address drive-throughs at all. And with the standard, cannot have a drive-through between the primary road and the building, but in this case, as Mr. Kramer stated, we felt that this was the best alternative for the traffic flow.
Thank you. So, I have a question, Mr. Constantine. I'm gonna step back up there. So I looked at my plan. We have two plans, these large plans. One's dated March 28, one's dated April 7. And if you look at your legend, it's 1 inch equals 20 feet on the plan that we have
Correct.
in front of us. Okay. So the sign is going to be 50 feet long, I think that you're proposing. Pardon me? Oh, I know, but I mean, it's been discussed. So my question is, it may buffer some of the cars that, you know,
Correct.
along that drive.
That was our intent with the sign, and we're gonna be adding landscaping and working with the city's landscaping architect to determine the proper bushes or shrubs or whatever to allow for proper screening.
And the city has a landscape architect? Oh, from our engineering firm, okay. Okay, thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Mrs. Snyder?
I just have a real quick question. On the drawing that, the figure 2 of this little one, there's like a little area where the buffering stops and it looks like little steps. It goes to the sidewalk. Is it a walkway through there?
Yes, we plan on having a walkway connecting the sidewalk to the Chick-fil-A sidewalk.
But the walking across that traffic, would that be a problem? Because they would be walking across the driveway.
Through the drive-through?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, that, I don't think there will be a problem with that. You know, the cars will be stacked and they'll be, stopped there. So it'll allow pedestrian traffic through there.
Okay, so maybe the buffering wouldn't be, like tall, like really huge tall buffering so that
I
people
think
could see?
I believe we're planning on, somewhere between 4 to 5 feet for the height of the bushes.
All right, thank you.
Do you have a plan that you can set there for us to look at?
Sure.
Greg Shuck.
State your name and address, please.
Greg
for the
Shuck,
record.
23225 Mercantile Road, Beechwood, Ohio.
Thank you.
Want to see the plan?
Oh. I looked at the thing. I just couldn't see a person walking across. That's where. Right, lower. Okay, thank you.
So I don't have a small plan, but I had the two large ones, which I alluded to a little bit ago. And on those two plans, I noticed that on the March 28th plan, the curb radius was 18 degrees, and on the April 7th plan, you changed it to 5 degrees, which consequently made the drive 20 feet wide versus 15 feet wide on the west driveway.
Sorry, I apologize. I wasn't following the dimensions you were throwing out where we're at.
I'm talking, here, I'll show you. I don't have that little plan, so I can't.
I have it.
So, right here. So this was, I wrote my notes down. It was on the March 28th plan, it was much larger than it is here. So it looks like you've cut this down and made the road wider to put. So now it's three lanes go down here. And then it goes to 3, right? That's what I just, right here. So now you've made this smaller for landscape because it was a big curve. It's changed. And so, does council have that plan with that change on it? Is that the one you had?
Did council get that in their packet, the final plan, the final site plan from planning? The small one? Yeah.
I got, I have the big one.
You didn't get one of these?
Is that the one with the word?
Is that the one, was that in with Doug's letter?
That's
Two, and then
It says figure 2 at the bottom?
right here. You see how wide that is?
Yeah.
And it's been cut down. Up at the top, up, yeah, at that radius. It's at the radius is where it is. The radius became much smaller. Well, I wish I would have. So, yeah, so they made the radius smaller, so that, right. So I mean, I looked at the plans, and that was the only plan I had, so that was where I picked up that it changed, and no one had said anything about that radius changing, so I just wanted to make sure.
That was in the planning minutes. Should have been, because we talked about it.
It was in it was in what the package that we submitted for planning, and it should have been the same package that came to council as well.
Madam President, we did discuss it at planning, that change, because there were other suggestions by planning commission that they
Thanks, okay.
implemented. So we talked about that suggested change by the traffic engineer.
So it allows 2 lanes to make that turn here at the
Only
radius.
only one lane will make the right turn, but it allows 2 lanes so the cars aren't backing up. You're not backing up over here.
Exactly. Okay.
Right.
That's, this is Mayfield here.
Cars that are backed up there making that left-hand turn, if it's backed up, you can
Yeah,
still
that's
get
the
past.
radius that got smaller. Thank you. And it's the back of the building that faces Mayfield Road?
That is correct, yes.
And it's going to look like the rest of the shopping center?
Yeah, based on Architectural Review Board, when we were there on Thursday, they came in with their prototype design, which, we're revising it essentially to match, use material similar to what we're using on the rest of the center, and it'll look, like the rest of the center.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJaan?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, Resolution 2017-19 has been approved. We will now move on to Resolution 2017-20. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution 2017-20, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant through the Ohio Association of Regional Councils, OARC, and declaring an emergency. Mayfield Road Corridor Traffic Signals Safety and Equipment Upgrade. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJaan?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mercurio. Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. As was discussed at the committee meeting prior to this council meeting, the total estimated cost of the project has been adjusted to $2,846,000 instead of the $3 million. And the local share, the 20%, has been adjusted to $517,500 instead of the $600,000. So that has been included in the resolution to be adopted.
Thank you. The federal government has set aside money for the congestion mitigation and air quality projects through the state of Ohio, and ODOT is administering through NOACA. If the grant is received, it would assist with the corridor traffic signal safety equipment upgrades. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call on the motion to approve. I'm looking at Lisa, does she?
Mr. DeJaan?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, Resolution 2017-20 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-21, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-21, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant through the Ohio Association of Regional Councils, OARC, and declaring an emergency, Lander Road Roundabout. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJaan?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. Likewise, at the committee meeting held before council, the numbers were corrected from $1.8 million as the estimated cost to $1,434,386 as the estimated cost. And then the local share, which is 20%, has been corrected from $360,000 to $286,877. And that's what will be voted on, and that's the resolution is corrected, so no amendment is necessary.
Mrs. Finney, would you like to add anything since this just came out of your committee?
No, I think just that the committee did really think that these are both important to go through because we have a deadline of May 5th. So we want to get this going so we could try to get this money for these projects.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJaan?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Resolution 2017-21 has been approved. We'll move on to our next resolution, 2017-22. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-22, a final resolution enacted by the City of Mayfield Heights, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the Legislative Authority Local Public Agency, or LPA, in the matter of appropriating funds for the resurfacing of Somme Center Road, requesting the Director of Transportation proceed with the project, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract providing for payment, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. Again, Mr. Murphy just read the title of this resolution, which pertains to the city being the local public agency working with the Director of Transportation for the resurfacing of Somme Center. Any other comments or discussion? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Resolution 2017-22 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-23. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-23, a resolution declaring Friday, April 28, 2017 as Arbor Day in the City of Mayfield Heights. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. As stated by Mr. Murphy, we will be declaring Arbor Day, April 28th, 2017 in the city, and we will be planting a tree in our city park. Mayor, do you want to add anything? I know we do this annually.
Yes, we do now.
Yes, we do now.
Yep, nothing to add.
Nothing to add. And where in the city park? Which city park? Do we know?
Sure.
decided?
As Joe decided, Service Director Fernaro decided where to put it yet. East side of the main park.
East side of the main park. Thank you, Mr. Fernaro. Looked like he was resting back there. We didn't mean
Get a
to,
little
we didn't
late
mean to
now.
wake you, Mr. Fernaro. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Resolution 2017-23 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-24. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-24, a resolution authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health regarding the provision of Phase 2 stormwater services in 2017-18 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Everyone received a copy of the memorandum of understanding that is before us tonight for approval from Cuyahoga County Board of Health, and will provide a number of services under Phase 2 stormwater services to the city of Mayfield Heights until December of 2018. Any comments or discussion? Mayor, I have a question. Is the contract for 20 months, or are we just late in getting it and approving it? Is it from May of 2017? It is from January 1st.
It's
It was
January
from
1st,
January
yeah.
1st. Okay, that's what I.
Yep.
And it also states that, in here that, that they're gonna train annually on the management practices. Who here in the city gets trained?
We haven't decided. I think the engineer will probably be the one who gets trained. Correct, Dan? Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Gerson. Okay. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Resolution 2017-24 has been approved. We'll move on to Resolution 2017-25. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-25, a resolution rescinding resolution number 2016-69, adopted November 14, 2016, and authorizing the mayor to execute a revised agreement known as the Euclid Creek Watershed Partnership Agreement, appropriating funds to comply with said agreement and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Everyone received a copy of the memo from Mr. Tribby with the explanation of the resolution, as well as a copy of the partnership agreement with Euclid Creek Watershed. In 2016, the partnership agreement with Euclid Creek Watershed was approved by council with an annual fee of $5,500, and the resolution requires council to rescind that resolution in the amount of $5,500 and approve the new revised annual amount of $3,000. Oh, Mr. DeJohn, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, how did it go down? The revised amount?
Mr. Murphy?
They took out some of the services that we're providing, specifically the public improvement and public education pipe program. So now we're saving $2,500, and apparently the regional sewer district is going to do that portion of it, and it will be I understand it, of no cost to the city, but there'll be a future agreement on that one. So council will get a chance to look at that. But basically, the pipe program's out.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Resolution 2017-25 has been approved. We will now move on to ordinances, and we'll begin with ordinance 2017-12. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2017-10.
10.
An ordinance enacting Chapter 1375 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mayfield Heights regarding temporary containers. Third reading.
Yeah, make a motion to table this until we have this meeting with Mr. Murphy, Mr. Jameson, and the mayor. Discuss some issues with this legislation.
I'll second it.
Roll call on the motion to table ordinance 2017-10.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. This motion, excuse me, this motion has been carried, and ordinance 2017-10 has been tabled. We will now move on to ordinance 2017-12. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2017-12, an ordinance enacting Chapter 961 of the codified ordinances of the city titled Indigent Decedent Policy. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. This resolution is to enact a new chapter in our codified Chapter 961, which provides the city of Mayfield Heights to take responsibility of disposing of an indigent person who is a resident of Mayfield Heights. Mr. Murphy, I see you.
To
I
elaborate?
see you just sliding up
I
there.
just
to
can't
say
wait,
something. I know.
This has been, shall we say, plaguing the city for several years now. It used to be the law that the county in Tarrant was responsible for taking care of indigents who had died in the county and footing the bill. And I think about 5 years ago, the legislature changed that to make the city of residents responsible for taking care of the remains of an indigent, even if he was claimed, or that person was claimed by a person who was indigent, the city still had to foot the bill. Recently, I've been contacted by Hillcrest Hospital on several occasions, the Euclid General Facility of the clinic, Manor Care, and I believe, a couple, the medical examiner from the county, for certain indigents who were found dead in their homes. And it's up to the city to dispose of the remains of those individuals and to pay that cost. So I've been in touch with a number of different funeral directors, and the mayor and I decided that it would be best to codify this to come up with a procedure, because we really had none. We didn't know whether or not these individuals were really indigent, who had just looked at it to see whether or not they were indigent, whether or not the people claiming them were indigent. It was just, we were kind of making it up as we were going. Plus, trying to find a funeral director to take it was kind of a problem too. So ultimately, we decided that this should be introduced to council for council's consideration to put together a policy so that anybody who had a body that they wanted to turn over to the city had to follow certain procedures in order to do so, and then the city would accept that indigent and would be responsible for paying for disposing of the remains.
So I think there's more to this than that we really need to think about and look into. Can we table it and do some research?
It's up to council, whatever.
I'd like to make a motion to
Yeah,
table it. There's just
administration has researched it and the recommendation.
I know I looked at the Ohio Revised Code and I looked at some other cities, and I'd like to make a motion to table it so that we can.
I'll second your motion.
Okay. Roll call on the motion to table.
Mrs. Finney?
No.
Mrs. Sabetta?
No.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy?
Yes. This ordinance has been tabled. We will now move on to motions. Mr. Murphy.
Madam President, if I could just interject, we need to discuss this as soon as possible, because it's amazing how often this is coming up right now. In this year alone, is it 4?
5, I think.
4 or 5 just this year. So I just encourage council, if they want to discuss it, modify it, whatever, we just need to do it soon. We need a procedure in place.
So let's, let's organize a committee meeting. Excuse me. Let's organize a committee meeting, Lisa, to discuss this. I don't know, what committee takes care of?
Legislative.
Legislative.
Legislative, Mrs. Snyder.
Got it.
It's in your hands.
Okay.
Mayor,
Mr. DeJean.
we've had that many cases in the city of Mayfield Heights, residents?
We've had 5, yes,
I
this year.
think 5, there may be.
I'm pretty sure. No, I think it was 5.
There were 2 from the ME, and there were 3 at Villa Serena, and I think there was 1 in Euclid, but that may have been last year.
That they actually proved they did live in that they lived in Mayfield Heights?
Yes.
Yes. Prove, you know, unfortunately, we get the call that, hey, we've had this body here for a month and we've got to move it out, so come get it. And, you know, we don't have any means to go and take a look and see ever, number 1, whether or not they're really indigent. Number 2, whether or not they lived in Mayfield Heights. Number 3, is there anybody claiming it? And ultimately, what has been done is they've been cremated, so you need a release, as you know, for the cremation, and you know, it's just a kind of a complicated procedure, and we needed to codify it in order that, you know, we were crossing our T's and dotting our I's, so to speak.
And I agree with codifying it, it's just some of the things in the ordinance I disagree with.
Okay.
Well, and you just said someone called and said, you know, we have a body down here for a month. Why did they call us? Why didn't they call?
Because they're a resident of the city.
Oh, so that was, you were sure of that? They knew?
They had determined that they
They
were a
determined
resident
it.
of the city. Like I said, two of them lived at Villa Serena. Two individuals died in their homes. That was the medical examiner. There was a Manor Care resident, and that was the 5. I guess the one at Euclid General was, it might have been last year, but they're coming up more often than we would like. We do need a procedure, and you know, I'd be appreciative if there's things you disagree with in there. It's basically following state law, so you know, it's stuff we got to do.
Very well aware.
Yes. Since we have 2 funeral directors here, both very well aware of it, I'm
Mr.
sure.
DeJohn has assisted in the past.
Oh, and I know the mayor has. Okay, so Mrs. Snyder will get that meeting together. We'll now move on to motions. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a final site plan for a new counter-service restaurant building, Chick-fil-A, at 6390 Mayfield Road, contingent upon council's approval of the variances.
Roll call on the motion to approve.
You didn't ask for motions.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We do need a motion to approve. Sorry about that.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Mrs. Finney. Second,
Second.
Mr. Mercurio. Now we'll do a roll call on the motion to approve. Discussion.
Well,
Mr. DeJean?
I'd like to see those Golden Gate driveways straightened out for the last time before this is approved. So anything you can do for
You know, based on the plan that we just submitted with the driveways, this angle, you know, ownership feels that it's, you know, better for pedestrian safety and
do know that it used to be straight at one time, and then all of a sudden, several years back, they changed it to this new design. And for what reason, I have no idea.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that, but we are, it kind of shows, current situation where you're coming in, you have to make a decision relatively quickly. This, you know, we're elongating this drive pretty significantly, especially when we have the pedestrian walkway there. You'll have the additional stacking to be beneficial. We just don't want to see anybody get hurt, you know, when the car is zooming in, when it's straight away essentially.
Have there been any recorded incidents there of people getting hurt?
Not that I'm aware of.
Those driveways were straight from the day they built that shopping center, and there was never a problem there. And I'm here to tell you that the people in this community want those driveways straightened out. We get nothing but complaint calls on that. People think it's stupid, they think it's dangerous, and they want something done with it.
And, well, we did work out a plan where we did straighten out the driveways. Zoom out a little bit. So, I mean, if you guys like that better, we don't have a problem going with that. But we just wanna be on the records, you know, that we feel that this is a lot less safe than curved driveways.
I don't think anything can be less safe than what's there now, believe me. There's nothing but confusion in those driveways. People do not follow the lines, they cross over. All you gotta do is stand there and look at it and watch the cars come in and out of there, and you'll see.
But, Madam President,
Mayor?
I hear what Mr. Mano's saying. I completely agree with him in the current configuration. But if you put the other one that shows the old, yeah, the current configuration, I agree with you wholeheartedly that it is extremely confusing and somewhat dangerous because you don't know what to do coming in. But I think changing it to this configuration here completely changes the whole dynamic of the drive by lengthening it, because you're not having to turn right away. You're coming all the way down to essentially by Marshalls before you're gonna turn. You don't see that, or, I mean, you don't agree with that? You think it's still the same problem?
I think the problem is exacerbated. You leave the curves in there and nobody pays attention to them, nobody follows them. It's a dangerous situation. Pedestrian traffic, I noted in the one report, there's the pedestrian traffic there is usually in the morning, which is people getting off the bus and going into the center to go to work, in the evening to go home. During the day, I would tell you there's probably a minimal amount of pedestrian traffic there. But I have had near misses in there myself 2 or 3 times. People don't pay attention to the markings on the road, and they're all over the place. Those driveways were straight from the day they built that shopping center, and there was never a problem. And then when this thing cropped up, all we heard about this as council members was how stupid it was, how ridiculous it was, and when are you gonna change it?
Oh, and that's why we did, came up with the alternate plan. This was, the city's traffic engineer just felt this was a better scenario, but, we did take into consideration.
Well, you know what?
Bringing it out.
You're putting together the shopping center, and I wish you well, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if those driveways don't get straightened out, a lot of the constituents in this city are gonna have, that's a bitter pill for them to follow, because the people want those driveways straightened out. That's all we've heard.
We have our traffic engineer here in the audience. Why don't you come up, sir, and give your opinion on the driveways and how the curved driveways are safer than the straight driveways. Since I believe you've been our traffic engineer for many years, in fact, when this was done, because Mayor Egensberg's niece, I believe, did this through North Star. So you were our traffic engineer at that time as well, I believe.
I worked for the company that was the traffic engineer
Right,
at that time.
yeah,
But
so-
I've been now assisting you with my own firm since 2005.
That's correct.
Mike Schweikert, TMS Engineers, 2112 Case Parkway, Twinsburg, Ohio.
Thank you.
The current thought process of the curvature has been a change to the design thought process by engineers because of just like the revolution of roundabouts, getting a compact curvature so that we slow traffic down. It's a calming effect. When you have those straightaways, people tend to want to move to their destination as quickly as possible. But when you have the curvatures, it tends to slow them down, and then the crash records show that there is an increased safety. How much more? It's very difficult to say. You know, you're still talking about a shopping center, which is already a lower functional classification of a roadway. Just like a local road, you know, you're already at slow speeds. So, like I said, it's the thought process that engineers have started designing in all the current designs and have shown to work well in providing that calming effect. But I'm not so certain that, you know, straights in this particular case is not any different, except for the fact that we do acknowledge the fact that we need all the stacking we can get, because during the holiday rush, we need as much space as we can get, and the curvature does provide that. So there's some, you know, pros and cons to either design.
How much stacking, how many cars are you gonna put in the stack? What will it afford you, having the curves?
I don't remember what our report said. We did.
1 or 2 cars.
Pardon me?
1 or 2 cars, that's what it said. That was the anticipation, there would be 1 or 2 cars.
Stacked in there?
That it would afford additional stacking
Oh,
for 1 or 2
additional,
cars.
yes, correct, yes.
Right.
Right.
I'm just telling you, you know, the people in the city are the people who come to your shopping center to shop. And I would think that you'd wanna make them as happy as you can. And I'm telling you, that's a bone of contention. People want those driveways straightened out. They thought it was stupid from the beginning, and they still think it's stupid, and it's dangerous. I would, in fact, make a motion that this final approval is contingent upon those driveways being straightened out.
Empress,
Mr. DeJohn.
can we just hold off on his motion there? I just wanted to ask Mr.
So
Constantine.
once there's a motion, you have to second. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion that this is, oh. I believe one. So, Mr. Schweikert, can you step back up to the podium, please? since you're the traffic engineer, our question is, do you give your approval that the driveways can be straightened? Would you give your approval that the driveways can be straightened?
I could recommend approval, yes, I could. There's some designations up there that are a little bit off, but for the most part, it's fine.
Excuse me, Madam President, will this hold up the whole procedure then if we don't have this final site plan in there to get this going for Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, if we don't receive final approval, I won't be able to release my engineer. And, you know,
I feel that we should vote on this here. We've been playing with this for a long time on the table, everything, and we went through it, we met on it, we've talked about it, and I think that the Planning Commission approved it, so I would like to just tell the council to go ahead and approve it, so they can move forward with the plan. We don't want to hold up Chick-fil-A coming to the city
Not gonna
because...
hold them up.
Because as much as we want the drive to be okay, I don't think really Golden Gate is as bad as we thought it was going to be, one. Two, I love that now it's vibrant, that people are coming in there, and it's, I mean, I feel safe now in the parking lot because there's people. Why would we not want to promote this in our city? People love Chick-fil-A. I say we move forward.
It's not against Chick-fil-A, and it's not gonna hold up the project. All we're saying is, we will give them the final approval as long as they give us their word that they will straighten out those driveways. In the course of the construction and what they have to do there, they can straighten out those driveways.
We have a motion on the table. It was moved by Mr. Mano. It was seconded by Mr. Dijon. This plan is contingent upon the driveways being straightened, which we have the recommendation from our traffic engineer right here. And was there something else?
Do we,
You have to vote on whether or not you want to make the approval contingent on the driveways being straightened.
I thought there was something else also. No, just the
No,
driveways.
no.
Okay.
Can
All
I,
right.
can I ask the traffic engineer a question, or?
Sure. Sure.
I guess, I know you said you can recommend either way. What's your preference and why?
I like the curvature built into it for that traffic calming effect. When there is a great deal of pedestrian activity in the morning and in the evening, I think that it tends to slow those people down when we have people in the crosswalk. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Madam,
Mrs. Sabetta.
thank you. The first question I'd like to ask is, if you do straighten the lanes, will they match up to Golden Gate? Will they match up to Golden Gate to come through?
Golden Gate Boulevard.
Golden Gate Boulevard, which is across Mayfield?
yes, they would. We're not doing anything with the curb cuts there, so
So
we'll
that
still
would-
be in line with, you know, across the street, yes.
Every meeting that I've been at, all, including ABR, have stated that they were okay with the curved due to the safety and calming, as you call it, and I recall a 2.5 car stacking. Is that correct?
No, the 2.5 is in addition to what's there now.
Okay.
We just went back and created a complete computer model, which is the reason why we had them widen out this area in here, because we need that additional stacking. But we're talking, you know, in 12 cars at most in each lane. We need that for,
And do we need that for every single day, or do we need it for the holiday?
we need it for peak hours,
Peak hours
weekday peak hour, and Saturday peak hour for the.
and Saturday?
For the,
And my
shopping
third
center.
question was exactly that. They are planning on putting a lot more business and a lot more traffic in there. Would we be making a mistake by putting it straight and not using the curb for future?
Yeah, you're gonna lose some capacity.
Losing capacity means what, sir?
There may be more times that you're actually stacked, you know, through the intersection.
And that's, you're talking about just Chick-fil-A. Mrs. Sabetta, were you talking about?
No, we're
Chick-fil-A?
talking
You're talking about the entire shopping center.
shopping
The
center.
entire shopping center, okay.
Egress and, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Dijon?
So I have a question. First question is does Corporal Woods have to sign off on this, straightening these drives?
Mayor?
I would say no, because his recommendations are still there. The recommendations of the crosswalks and the adding the sidewalk, that was the only thing that he suggested.
Mr. Constantine, how do people get into the bank from the straight drives and the curvature drives? And where do they park?
For the bank,
Yes.
bank traffic would be parking over here.
Point out where the bank is on this drawing.
The bank sits right on the corner here.
Yeah, so the door is further north there. My concern is with the curvature drives, that people are gonna park in the Chick-fil-A parking lot and try to get across those curvature lanes to get into the bank if we don't straighten them out, if we leave them curved. And that's a definite hazard.
I would say they're gonna cross it no matter what, curved or straight. I don't see how that is a factor.
But I think crossing straight lines where you actually see where the cars are coming from is a little safer than.
And I know Mrs. Finney said we had, a number of meetings and, we discussed this and she just wants Chick-fil-A, but we sit up here because we represent the residents. And we have to make sure that it's safe for the residents going in and out. It has not been safe for years. Mr. Constantine and I met the other morning and we stood there and we watched those cars come in. They were in the lane that had the arrow to turn. They were in that lane and they went straight.
Yeah, they kind of did whatever they wanted there.
They did whatever they wanted to do. So it's a traffic nightmare. I wanted to see what Google Earth looked like from 2006 and 2008 and how the driveways looked. And everyone should take a look and Google it, because the comments below were all, I hate that shopping center, I hate those driveways, it's a nightmare. Going in from Marsal, the parking lot's I actually felt bad for Mr. Hornig, who just bought the shopping center, if you read the reviews that were associated with it. So, our concern up here should be, yes, woo-woo, we get Chick-fil-A, but how about the residents? That's what you should be thinking about. You shouldn't be sitting up here only worried that, no offense, that you get Chick-fil-A. We have to worry about safety. That's our job.
Yes, and they did explain it was safer to have the curvature during certain times, and during future, it's going to be even better. So we are thinking of the safety.
Okay.
We are
Okay.
thinking,
Listen, that's fine, Mrs. Sabetta.
yes.
Mrs. Snyder, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It looks like on both sides with the curvature and then eliminating it, what we're eliminating is concrete
That is, concrete or asphalt, yes.
on both sides.
Yes.
So that's not a huge deal. And then on the east side, there's the bank, like that center bank comes down further with the straightening of it, whereas it's a shorter bank on the curved one. The lane looks like the lane going out looks like it splits into 2 lanes there on the curved one, but on the straight, it just goes 1 lane straight out. Sorry.
Greg Shunk, 23225, Tower Road, Beechville, Ohio.
Yes.
So
If you look at the curved one, if you can put them side by side, or right. So
the intent is to use the infrastructure that's there now. So that would be the curb cut, the lanes, as well as the lights. So there's 3 or 4 lanes there now, 2 going out for sure. The idea is to align are starting with 1 lane. And then you transfer into 2 lanes.
Okay, so we won't really lose those 2 lanes then, because there'll be something, I see. Okay,
There will be 2 lanes leaving. Again, the infrastructure leaving and coming into the site is gonna stay the same.
okay.
The lights are not gonna change. The position of the lanes, the position of the lights are not going to change.
Okay, and then one more thing, if the current owner does do something with the back lot where there'd be a new business in back, will the traffic, this pattern, have a problem, you know, because they'll be coming out from where the bank is? Yes, that way. Or there'll
It's
be,
something we'll have to look at that time. So right now, I don't think there's plans for that back building at this point.
okay,
So I know that when I met with Mr. Constantine, I asked if that additional concrete could be removed on both sides. By America's Best, I think we said it was like 15 feet of extra concrete that sticks out on that side. 15 to 16 feet, I think. Well, that's on the west driveway. And there was some by the bank on the east driveway. So you've decided not to take out that additional cement either? If we go with the straight one, you'll remove it.
Yeah, with the straight one, it would be removed.
So it'd be just 1 lane that would go straight back and that concrete would be out. Because it's
Yeah,
six,
just like we talked about.
right, it's 16 feet of concrete that doesn't serve a purpose. It's not we have a sidewalk that's 10 feet. And that was an additional 16 feet of concrete that created that jutting out effect.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so, Mr. Murphy, we have, I am,
Amendment. Straight versus,
yeah, we have a motion and a second that this is contingent on the driveways being straightened, straight versus curved.
yes.
So that's our vote. Roll call on the motion. We're voting, go ahead.
Mr. DeJohn, or Mr. Manor, I moved that the driveways be straightened and then this plan be considered. So the vote right now is whether council wants the driveways straight or the driveways curved as has been discussed. If you vote yes, it's straight.
No is how the planning commission approved.
Correct.
Oh, I didn't my mic on, sorry.
Mrs. Snyder?
I just have one more question. The straight images, were they showed to the planning commission as well?
No.
So
They
the planning
never-
commission never saw the straight option?
Correct.
Okay.
And I met with Mrs. Teresi in the field on Friday, last Friday, to kind of go over that, and then made my engineers come up with that real quick. I think they worked the weekend.
Okay.
And then,
All right, thank you.
wasn't it questioned though at planning?
The feeling at planning was the curvatures were no big deal, except for myself. I wanted them straight. But I voted for the plan because I want Chick-fil-A in the city.
And it was
President.
voted, it was initially tabled at planning. I think Mr. DeJohn tabled it, it was seconded, it was put on the table, and then there was some kind of quiet discussion here, and one of the people who tabled it, Mrs. Horvath, as a matter of fact, then said, no, I don't want to table it anymore, I want to vote on it, and then they voted, and everybody changed their votes. I think that's how it was, Mayor.
Madam President, yeah, I didn't change my vote. Mine was
Did
the
not
same.
change your vote, so
The
that's right.
Planning Commission, yeah, that is right. Planning Commission didn't think it was no big deal. We talked about it. We felt that the experts would know the best way to lay out the driveway, so that was the way we voted.
Roll call on the motion.
Mr. Mercurio?
No.
Mrs. Finney?
No.
Mrs. Sabetta?
No.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
No.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
3 to 4 vote.
So we go with the curved driveway. The motion has failed, and we'll go with the curved driveway.
Don't we have to vote
to
now
vote
on the
on that.
curved driveway?
We'll-
Yes.
So now we need a roll call to vote on the motion as stated on our agenda, the approved plan. Lisa?
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
No.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
No. And again, it was approved. So the motion has been approved as originally stated. There's nothing else on there. I don't believe it. I think we're done, right? Okay, so, is there any new business or comments from council? Our council business agenda has concluded this evening, and we will now proceed into executive session. I need right, I was just gonna say that. Oh, I know. It is now 9:06, and at this time, do I have a motion to go to executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Need a roll call.
We need a roll call? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. The motion has passed, and we are now moving into executive session.